Hello, my name is Michaela McGregor, and today I'm going to be ranking all of my classes from my first year of law school, which is a little bit late because it is August 1st as I film this. I had a really crazy busy summer doing my internship, but I'm finally going to make this, and hopefully it'll be relevant to those of you who are going to be starting your first year of law school in just a few weeks. I'm actually going back and looking at my syllabi to do this ranking thing to make sure that I'm really thinking comprehensively about every single class that I took and that I'm remembering all of the elements. As always, I'm not ranking it based on the professor because I don't think that's very useful or fair. So I'm just trying to ignore whoever taught it and think only about the content of the course and how I liked the material and the legal concepts, etc. So I attend Boston University, and there are 8 courses that you have to take during your first year. Technically 7, because one of them is both semesters. They are lawyering. I've always hated that name. It sounds really ridiculous. Lawyering 1 and lawyering 2. Property, torts, constitutional law, contracts, civil procedure, and criminal law. I'm going to be ranking these with some really not creative adjectives. We've got incredible, great, decent, uninspired, and icky. And then I also did take ice skating at BU, and because I took it at BU, even though it was 0 credits, I am going to include that, as well as business fundamentals, which is actually, it's a required course that you need to graduate BU law. You don't have to do it during first year, but most people do it during their 1L summer, so that's what I did this summer. I actually just finished it. Let's start. So basically every single law school does have some sort of legal writing class. That is what my lawyering class was, and the core things that you learn in lawyering are how to do legal writing, essentially. Writing memos and writing briefs, doing citations, that's a huge part of it, blue booking, citations, really the nuts and bolts of being a lawyer. For my first semester of lawyering, we focused on client interview, a closed memo, which is where you have only a couple cases to look at, an open memo where you have lots of cases to look at. Honestly, I found lawyering 1 to be very challenging, especially as a creative writing major, because you're being introduced and thrust into this whole new world of writing. And I went in and I was thinking, oh, this isn't going to be very different. It's going to be just, it's just writing. It's just writing. It's not just writing. And citations are not just citations. Blue book citations are this whole other species, and it's insanely nitpicky. It was just so foreign to me. Therefore, I'm going to say that lawyering 1 was decent, because it was useful. Contracts. What's so funny is I think that has to be ostensibly one of the most boring names for a class of all time. I would say, though, it was more interesting than I expected. You really just go over offer, acceptance, and consideration. It's over and over again, and every single case you read is just very formulaic in a sense once you get into it. I would say that we focused on the UCC a lot more than I expected to, so I was less a fan of that. Contracts really fits the definition of uninspired. And the thing is that I don't want that to come across as a bad thing. Just because it's uninspired doesn't mean I didn't like it, because honestly, I thought it was a lot better than I expected it to be. I did enjoy the theory of contracts. I think that just, it comes with a lot of boring cases, relatively speaking, compared to torts cases or criminal law cases, because that's just the nature of contracts cases. It's a lot of businesses doing business and someone breaches. So it's not the most riveting of all topics that you'll ever go over, but it was what it was. So I'm going to say it was uninspired. Civil procedure. To give a foreshadowing of what I'm going to think of this class. Honestly, it was fine. I'm just bitter about it because out of all the classes I took, civil procedure was my worst. It's my nemesis. It's just so... you have a book of federal rules, and you can actually probably see it right there in the background. So if you see that little tiny green book, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, that is right there. Honestly, it wasn't that horrible when I was taking it. And I know that this is a huge thing about being a lawyer, is the legalese and the phrasing's really bad. But the phrasing I just found was especially bad in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It's just these run-on sentences of rules that you have to understand and comprehend. And it just is so repetitive. You have to get into all of these part 1A, C, 2D, etc., etc. It's just... Sorry, civil procedure. It's so useful, and honestly, something that I learned at my internship this summer is it's the foundation of what goes wrong in court cases, because a lawyer may make a preservation issue. There might be a preservation issue. They don't object to something properly, and it can mess up an entire case. But the class itself is uninspired. Torts. This was fun. It feels a lot like criminal law in a way. You're reading it and you're thinking am I taking criminal law right now? But of course, then you realize when taking criminal law that it's very different. For anyone watching this who isn't familiar with torts, because I know going into law school, I was I've heard of a dessert tort, but I don't know what a tort actually is. It's a civil wrong. That's why it feels like there's some overlap with criminal law. Negligence, strict liability. I never liked strict liability very much, but that's very important for torts. There's duty, breach, causation, damages, and defenses. And that was kind of fun. It's kind of this, you get into this rhythm of identifying with each case. What is the duty? What is the breach? Was there causation? Was there approximate causation? I liked that there was more of a structure. So I'm going to say torts was great. Torts was a great class. I really did like that. Lawyering too. I like this so much more. Because at this point, finally, when you get into your second semester, it's like, okay, wait, I understand how to use active voice and how to write in a way that is so boring and concise, which of course is the opposite of everything I'd ever learned in college and was contrary to every single bone in my body that wanted to write with these flourishing words and colorful vocabulary. So it's kind of depressing. I warn you, if you're a creative writing major, literature major, it's kind of depressing starting with this. But I did like the second semester of lawyering a lot more, and we did a lot more hands-on work in a way. We did moot court, so we wrote essentially an appellate brief, and then we got to argue it. That was really the highlight of the semester. We did a client letter, email assignment, that's right. Negotiation, oh my gosh, we did this whole negotiation assignment. We sat down, we were in teams, we had to negotiate to try to find like this deal to make with the other team, which my team, our negotiation, it was fake, of course. We got so into it, it was intense. And I found that I just learned so much in this second semester. It felt so relevant to what I'm going to be doing and what I did this summer actually with my internship. So I really enjoyed second semester. I'm gonna say that it was great. Property was this weird mix of I really like this and I really hate this. We had a lot of readings about the history of property, and it really has a terrible history in the United States, which obviously, we all know kind of going into it, but actually reading these cases, reading Johnson v. McIntosh, these, the pinnacle of horrible historical decisions, that kind of thing. It's interesting to read about, interesting to learn about. I would say that I really enjoyed things like eminent domain, and I really didn't enjoy things like easements. I think therefore I have no choice but to put it into the category of decent. Property, I remember thinking this is so specific. Like, why are we learning about just property? Like, just real estate? It just seems so niche for a class, but it's really quite expansive once you get into it, and you don't really realize beforehand how many moving parts there are. That I found interesting, actually, just how broad it is. Constitutional law, con law, I went into class just every day loving the lectures. I loved the cases we read. The one thing that you should know about con law is you have to read very long cases. They're often very long-winded. Pretty much everything is the Supreme Court. So you're reading these incredibly important opinions, and like I said, especially everything, before 1900, it's very much a different style of English. I liked it. It just brought to mind reading old literature. This is why I'm mentioning it, actually, is because a lot of people don't enjoy reading those older cases. They find it a slog, and so really it's an acquired taste reading these types of cases. I personally enjoyed it. I really loved starting at the beginning, straight off with Marbury v. Madison, and working our way through, McCulloch v. Maryland and Gibbons v. Ogden v. Gibbons? Wait. Gibbons v. Ogden. I think that especially just right now, con law is so important, and getting to take this class in our political climate and getting to take it knowing all the current events that are going on, it's not only fascinating, but it also just feels so crucial and fundamental, and I was so engaged because I wanted to really truly understand this. And when you want to learn and understand something, it makes it all the more interesting. So I loved con law. I'm gonna say it was incredible. At the same time, let's just take a break from the legal subjects. I took ice skating, and I won't linger on this because most law students don't do ice skating. I loved ice skating. I was scared of it though, I will say. My friend got a concussion and I sprained my wrist. I fell backwards and landed on my wrist. Every time I went on the ice, I was like, is this the day that I'm gonna fall backwards and actually break a wrist? So I'm gonna say ice skating was great. It was not incredible because detracting points for the scary elements. Business fundamentals. This is a required course for BU Law. They call it business fundamentals. It's really 99% accounting. I think I can say with confidence that this was the most monotonous class I've ever taken in my entire life. It was asynchronous, online. I didn't have to attend any lectures or anything. You just have to do it over the summer. Every time that I opened up a module, it was a snore fest. It was the most horribly boring thing, cash flow and bull market, bear market, balance sheet. I hated it. I hated it with a passion. This was involuntary. I was forced to do it. It was the, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. This is easily the ickiest class ever, the ickiest of the icky. Sorry, apologies to anyone watching this who is a business major in college, because I know there are a lot of you, and no offense, but I really don't like your major. I'm sorry. Anyway, criminal law. Oh my gosh, that was by far my favorite class that I took in law school. It's so structured. I said torts was structured, and it is, but criminal law is the most structured thing you can possibly do because there are so many elements and they're spelled out in detail to every single thing. We worked a lot off the model penal code, so it was just very regimented. You know, I liked that crim wasn't murky. It was straightforward. As anyone would expect, you read a lot of disturbing cases and you deal with a lot of really heavy and sensitive topics and things that it kind of makes your heart a little bit sick while reading it. But in the same way, it makes you more emotionally engaged with the content. It's very easy to care deeply about this course. Yeah, it was a fascinating course. Those were all of the classes that I took during my first year of law school. Obviously for me, spring semester was a whole lot better than the first semester. I was really happy that I loved it as much as I did. Overall, I did truly love it, and I think that this year, because I'm picking my classes, it's going to be even better. Good luck to those of you who are preparing for your classes. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.